She had always loved the piano. Ever since she was little, the black and white keys had been a kind of world where she could lose herself. Every day after school she would sit for hours, practicing the songs she loved, sometimes perfecting them, sometimes making mistakes that made her want to throw herself on the floor in frustration. But the music never let her go. Even when she was tired or sad, when nothing else in the world seemed to make sense, the piano was there for her, steady and comforting. For years she had played mostly for herself. Her family loved music and they encouraged her, but they were not people who went to big concerts or knew famous musicians. Her talent was something quiet, hidden in small rooms and in the corners of her mind where she dreamed of what she might do one day. She had never imagined that anyone outside her small circle would see her play. She never imagined being on a big stage with bright lights and important people watching her every move. One afternoon, she received a letter. At first, she thought it was just some advertisement or maybe a mistake. But as she read, her eyes widened. It was an invitation to play at a prestigious event in the city. The kind of event that famous musicians performed at, the kind of stage she had only seen in magazines or on TV. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the envelope. She read it again and again, almost hoping she would find a mistake, something that would make it less real. The event organizers were polite but clear. They said she could perform, but they asked her to play a simple, basic tune. They wanted something safe, something easy for the audience to enjoy. They did not know her talent and they did not ask for it. She could feel their words as a kind of gentle limit, a small fence they were placing around her abilities. Part of her felt disappointed. How could they not know what she could do? How could they not see that she was capable of more? But another part of her understood. This was her first time on a big stage. They wanted to be cautious. She spent the next few days thinking about it constantly. She walked through the streets, hearing the sounds of the city, imagining what it would be like to sit in front of a grand piano in a hall full of people. She thought about every note she had ever played, every lesson she had ever learned. Her fingers itched to do more, to play what was in her heart rather than just what was asked. But the instructions were clear, simple, basic, safe. She was torn between obeying the rules and showing the music that lived inside her. Back at home, she practiced the basic tune. She played it over and over, each time trying to make it perfect. Her parents watched quietly, proud but nervous. They could see the longing in her eyes, the struggle between her own ambition and the boundaries set by the event. They knew her well enough to know that she was not someone who would ever settle for ordinary. Yet they also knew that sometimes the first step into the world required patience and caution. The night before the event, she could hardly sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind full of music. She thought about the people who would be watching her. Important people. People who could change her life. People who could see the spark in her and turn it into something bigger. But she also thought about failure. What if she made a mistake? What if she wasn't as good as she hoped? The questions tumbled over each other, refusing to let her rest. In the quiet of her room, she started to play the basic tune softly on her small keyboard. Her fingers remembered the movements instinctively, but her mind was elsewhere. She imagined the grand piano on the stage, the lights, the audience. She imagined herself sitting there, feeling every note deeply, not just playing, but living the music. Her heart beat faster, and for a moment she forgot everything else. The doubts faded, replaced by a sense of purpose she had never felt so strongly. The morning of the event, she dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that felt comfortable but respectful. She wanted to look professional, but she did not want to feel like she was hiding behind clothes. Every step she took toward the venue made her heart pound faster. The city seemed bigger that day, louder, and every sound reminded her that she was about to do something extraordinary. Even though she tried to focus on the basic tune, her mind kept wandering to the possibilities, to the music she wanted to share, the music that had always lived inside her. Backstage, the atmosphere was different from anything she had known. There were musicians tuning their instruments, event staff rushing past, and a low hum of conversation from the audience waiting beyond the curtains. She could hear the soft applause from earlier performers, and it reminded her that soon all eyes would be on her. She tried to calm herself, but her hands would not stop shaking. She took a deep breath and sat at the piano that had been set up for her. It was grand, shining under the stage lights, more beautiful than any piano she had ever touched. As she looked out at the audience through the dim light, she saw rows of faces. People she did not know. People who had no idea what she was capable of. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The instructions were clear, simple tune. Keep it safe. But somewhere deep inside, a spark ignited. She thought about all the times she had played alone, about every hour spent practicing, about every song that had moved her to tears or made her smile. She realized that this was her chance, and even if it was supposed to be small, she could still put herself into it, still make it hers. The moment came to start. She adjusted the bench, placed her fingers on the keys, and began the simple tune. At first she played cautiously, exactly as instructed, letting the music flow gently, carefully. She could hear the audience listening, polite and attentive. Her heart raced, but she kept her focus on the keys. Every note was precise, every rhythm correct. It was safe, it was simple, it was exactly what they asked. And yet, as she played, she felt the music inside her begin to grow. A melody she had not intended started to emerge. Subtle and quiet at first. It was like a whisper, a secret part of her talent that would not stay hidden. She felt her fingers moving more confidently, more freely. She was no longer just following instructions. She was expressing herself, even in the small, controlled way she had been asked to perform. The audience, unaware, continued to listen politely, not realizing that the first hint of something extraordinary had already begun to appear. The lights, the audience, the piano, all of it seemed to fade, leaving only her and the music. Every note carried a piece of her story. The struggles, the late nights, the quiet moments alone in her room, the joy of discovering something new in a song. She realized that even a simple tune could become beautiful if played with heart. And she also realized that soon she might have the courage to go beyond the boundaries set for her, to show them all the music that had been waiting inside for years. The first part of her journey was just beginning. She had stepped onto a stage that had once seemed impossible to reach. She had followed instructions, played a safe tune, and yet even in that simplicity she had begun to shine. The audience did not yet know what was coming, but she felt it in every fiber of her being. Something remarkable was about to happen, and she was ready to take the next step. Backstage, the world was different from anything she had experienced before. The hum of conversations, the soft clatter of instruments being tuned, and the quiet footsteps of event staff created a strange kind of music all its own. She moved carefully among the musicians, her eyes scanning faces she didn't know. Some were famous performers she had admired from afar. Others were seasoned professionals, and all of them seemed calm and confident. She felt out of place, a small figure in the midst of a world she had only dreamed of reaching. She found a quiet corner to sit and collect her thoughts. Her hands hovered over the piano even when she wasn't playing. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, every long afternoon spent practicing in her room, every mistake that had taught her something new, every moment of frustration that had strengthened her determination. She remembered the teachers who had guided her gently, the encouragement from family members who had seen something in her. She sometimes doubted herself, and the late nights when she played simply because she could not stop herself. All of it had led to this moment. She closed her eyes and imagined the audience waiting beyond the curtains. They were people she had never met, people who might be important in the music world, people who could change the course of her life with just a few words. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew she was supposed to play a simple, basic tune, but her mind wandered to the music she truly wanted to share, the melodies that had lived in her heart for years, waiting for someone to hear them. A friend she had brought along for support approached quietly. They didn't speak much, but they offered a reassuring smile and a gentle nod. It was enough to remind her that she was not alone. She took a deep breath and began to play softly on the small keyboard they had provided backstage. She played not the tune she was instructed to perform, but a piece she had composed herself in secret, a melody that reflected her deepest feelings. The notes were quiet, barely audible, but they carried with them all the weight of her emotions, all the hope and fear she had felt throughout her life. As she played, she felt herself becoming more grounded, more confident. The music reminded her of who she was and why she loved to play. It wasn't about impressing anyone, at least not yet. It was about expressing herself, about allowing the piano to carry her story, even if only a few people would ever hear it. She could feel the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, her heartbeat slow and her mind clear. For the first time that day, she felt a sense of calm. She thought about the audience again. She wondered what they expected from her. They had asked for a simple tune, but she knew that even something simple could be filled with emotion and life if she played it with all her heart. She remembered the advice from a teacher long ago. Music is not just notes on a page. It is feeling, it is intention. It is a connection between the player and those who listen. That thought gave her courage. She realized that even if she stayed within the boundaries set for her, she could still make the performance her own. The backstage area was busy, but she found small moments of silence between the chaos. She observed other performers as they prepared, noticing their routines, their focus, their confidence. Some of them were calm and steady, while others fidgeted with nerves. She realized that everyone, no matter how experienced, felt fear at times. That thought gave her comfort. She was not alone in feeling the weight of the moment, and even the most accomplished musicians had to face their doubts before stepping onto the stage. She began to run through the basic tune in her mind, imagining each note, each pause, each rhythm. She thought about how she could bring life to it, how she could infuse it with the music she carried inside her. She considered subtle changes, slight flourishes, ways to make the audience feel something more than just the simplicity of the tune. Her fingers twitched with anticipation, ready to move across the keys when the time came. Her thoughts drifted to the people she loved, the ones who had supported her unconditionally. She imagined their faces in the audience cheering for her, hoping for her success. That image gave her a sense of purpose. She realized that this performance was not just for the audience in the room. It was for herself and for everyone who had believed in her. It was a chance to honor all the time, effort, and love that had gone into her music. A stage manager approached to check if she was ready. She nodded, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. She took a few deep breaths, trying to center herself. The sounds of the backstage world faded as she focused on the piano, on the music, on the feeling in her chest that told her she was about to do something important. She knew the moment would be brief, that the audience would expect a simple tune, but she also knew that it was the first step in a journey that could lead anywhere. She closed her eyes for a moment and let her mind wander to the memories that had shaped her. She thought of the rainy afternoons when she played to drown out the sound of her own worries, the quiet nights when she sat by the window with only the moonlight and her piano for company, and the times when she had played for friends and family, feeling their silent encouragement. Each memory strengthened her resolve, reminded her of her love for music, and helped her gather the courage she needed. She opened her eyes and looked around once more. The backstage was bustling, but she no longer felt intimidated. She felt prepared, not just to play a tune, but to bring herself fully into the performance. She had practiced for years. She had learned from every mistake, and she had felt the music in her heart more deeply than anyone else could. She knew that when she stepped onto the stage, she would be ready. As she approached the piano, she felt a sense of connection to every note she would play. The keys were cold under her fingers, but the music was warm in her soul. She imagined the audience listening politely, unaware of the fire she carried within her. She thought about how even a simple tune could become something beautiful if played with intention and feeling. That thought gave her courage and filled her with a quiet determination. She sat down at the piano, adjusting the bench and taking a deep breath. She looked around the room one last time, seeing the faces of other performers, the stagehands, the small glimpses of the audience waiting beyond the curtains. She felt a surge of confidence. She knew that this was her moment, her chance to show what she could do, even within the limits set before her. She could feel the music rising inside her, ready to flow through her fingers and into the room. In that moment, she realized something important. She did not need permission to be herself, even if the world expected something simple. She could honor the rules, but she could also honor her music, her passion, and her heart. The audience would see a basic tune, yes, but they would also feel the depth of her talent, the sincerity of her expression, and the joy that she found in every note. The stage manager gave a small nod, signaling that it was almost time. She closed her eyes once more, letting her mind settle, letting her fingers relax, letting her heart steady. She thought about the journey that had led her here, about every struggle, every triumph, and every quiet moment of practice. She felt gratitude, excitement, and a sense of purpose that she had never felt so strongly before. Backstage, the air was filled with anticipation, and she could sense it too. But now it was not fear that took hold of her, it was readiness. She was ready to play, ready to share her music, ready to step into the light and let the piano tell her story. And as she waited for the moment to step onto the stage, she knew deep in her heart that this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. She stepped onto the stage, feeling the weight of the lights and the gaze of the audience on her. The hall was filled with people, their faces attentive, waiting for her to begin. For a moment she froze, letting the silence wrap around her. Every sound of the audience, the faint coughs, the rustling of programs, seemed louder than anything she had ever heard. Her heart raced and she felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but beneath it all was a quiet excitement, a feeling that she was finally where she was meant to be. She walked slowly to the grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the stage lights. It was bigger and more magnificent than any piano she had played before. She adjusted the bench, sat down, and placed her fingers on the keys. The keys were cool under her touch and the smoothness felt comforting, familiar. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, feeling the music waiting inside her. She began with the simple tune she had been instructed to play. Her fingers moved carefully at first, each note deliberate, clear, and precise. The audience listened politely as she had expected, but she could feel something more stirring inside her. The music was not just notes on a page anymore. It was a story, her story flowing through her fingers. She could feel the emotions rising in her chest, and the notes became more alive with every movement. As she played, she remembered the hours she had spent practicing alone, the times she had stumbled over a difficult passage and tried again, the long nights when she played until her fingers ached. Those memories gave her strength. She realized that even this simple tune could be beautiful, if played with intention and feeling. She focused on each note, letting it carry the emotion she wanted to share, letting the music breathe. The audience remained quiet, attentive, but she could sense a subtle shift. There was curiosity in their eyes, a hint that they were beginning to notice something different, something captivating about the way she played. She smiled faintly to herself, letting the music guide her. She knew that she could not rush this moment. The first few notes were always the most delicate, the most important. They set the stage for everything that followed. Her fingers began to move with more confidence. She played with a sense of flow, letting the music take her where it wanted to go. The simple tune she had been assigned became a canvas, and she began to paint it with subtle nuances, slight variations in timing, and gentle emphasis on certain notes. She was still within the bounds of the tune, but already she could feel the audience leaning in, drawn by the emotion in her playing. As she continued, she thought about all the people who had influenced her journey, the teachers who had encouraged her, the family who had supported her, and the friends who had cheered her on. Each thought added depth to her performance. She played not just for herself, but for them, letting their support and belief flow through her hands into the music. It made her feel connected, not just to the piano, but to everyone who had ever believed in her. The hall seemed to fade around her. She no longer noticed the audience, the lights, or the staff moving quietly in the wings. It was just her and the piano, and the music that had always been a part of her life. Each note carried a piece of her history, a memory, a feeling. She let herself be completely absorbed, trusting the music to guide her fingers and express what words could not. As she played, the simple tune began to transform. She added small embellishments, slight variations that made the melody richer and more expressive. The audience started to notice, their polite attentiveness turning into focused interest. She could feel the energy in the room changing, a subtle excitement building as they realized that there was more to this performance than met the eye. She kept her focus on the music, letting it lead her naturally, allowing the emotion to flow freely. Her hands moved with growing confidence, no longer hesitant or cautious. The notes became more dynamic, the rhythm more expressive, and the music began to tell a story. Each passage conveyed her emotions, her joy, her nervousness, her determination, and her hope. She could feel the audience responding even though she had not looked at them directly. There was a sense of connection forming, a shared understanding that transcended words. She paused for a brief moment, letting the final note of the simple tune linger in the air. There was silence, a brief breath held by everyone in the hall, and then a soft ripple of applause. It was polite but encouraging, a gentle acknowledgement of her skill and presence. She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of accomplishment, but she knew this was just the beginning. The music inside her was far from finished. As she continued, she began to explore the melody further. She added subtle variations, unexpected turns, and gentle flourishes that brought the simple tune to life. Her fingers danced across the keys with increasing confidence, and the music became richer, more textured, more vibrant. The audience leaned forward, their attention captured, their curiosity growing. They were witnessing something special, even if they did not yet fully understand it. She could feel her own excitement building. The music was no longer just an assignment. It was an expression of herself, a reflection of her journey and her passion. She let the emotions flow freely, allowing the melody to grow organically, guiding her fingers and her heart. Each note became a statement, each chord a declaration of her presence on the stage. The audience responded subtly at first. A few faces showed surprise, others showed admiration, and gradually the entire hall seemed to shift in energy. The music was reaching them, touching something deep, something unspoken. She had started with a simple tune as requested, but now it had transformed into a living, breathing expression of her talent and emotion. Her mind was clear, focused entirely on the music. She did not think about the audience, the applause, or the future. She only thought about the sound, the rhythm, the feeling of each note and how it connected to the one before. The piano was no longer an instrument. It was a partner, a voice through which she could speak without words. Every motion of her hands carried intention. Every pause carried meaning. As the first part of her performance came to a close, she felt a surge of energy. The music had begun to tell a story that was uniquely hers, a story that only she could tell. The audience was captivated, their polite applause now more enthusiastic, their curiosity turning into admiration. She felt a quiet thrill, knowing that the simple tune had become something extraordinary through her expression. She took a brief pause, letting the silence settle in the hall, and prepared to continue. She knew that the next phase of her performance would require courage, intuition, and trust in her own instincts. The audience had been drawn in, and now it was time to take the music further, to show them the depth of her talent, to transform the simple tune into a performance that would be remembered. Her fingers hovered over the keys, ready to begin again. The hall was still, waiting, and she could feel the anticipation building. She took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the audience, the weight of the moment, and the music that had always lived inside her. She knew that this was her moment, the first step toward something extraordinary, and with that thought, she let the music flow once more, trusting herself, trusting the piano, and trusting the story she was about to tell. As she continued to play, a new sense of freedom began to fill her. The simple tune, once a set of instructions she had been given, became a canvas for her own expression. Her fingers moved with more confidence and creativity, weaving small improvisations and flourishes into the melody. She no longer felt confined by the boundaries that had been set for her. Each note became a way to tell her story, to share a part of herself that had been waiting quietly for years. She allowed herself to explore the piano fully, letting the music grow and shift naturally. Her hands danced across the keys, creating layers of sound that were rich and expressive. She added subtle changes in rhythm, small pauses that gave the music breathing space, and delicate dynamics that made the tune feel alive. The audience, at first politely attentive, now leaned forward, drawn by the beauty and unexpected complexity emerging from the performance. The hall seemed to hold its breath as the music evolved. Every chord she played carried emotion. Every phrase spoke of her journey, her dedication, and the passion she had cultivated over years of practice. She could feel the connection forming between herself and the audience. They were no longer just listeners. They were witnesses to something extraordinary unfolding before them. She felt their attention, their curiosity, and their growing admiration as a quiet energy in the room. She thought back to her own struggles, the times when she had doubted herself, and the moments when music had been her refuge. Those memories became part of the performance, giving it depth and authenticity. Her fingers moved with intention, her heart guiding each note. She realized that the music she was creating now was not just a performance. It was a conversation between her and everyone in the room. Every rise and fall of the melody, every delicate nuance was a part of that dialogue. The improvisations grew bolder. She began to explore passages she had never played in public before, adding elements of rhythm and harmony that elevated the tune. It was still recognizable, still rooted in the simple melody she had been asked to perform, but it was now transformed. The music carried her confidence, her creativity, and her unique voice. The audience felt it too. They were captivated, their initial polite attention turning into genuine engagement. Some faces showed surprise, others awe, and some even had tears glistening in their eyes. She could feel the shift in energy. The room had become a living space for music, and she was the guide. She let her instincts lead her fingers, trusting in her years of practice and the deep connection she had with the piano. Each note was deliberate yet free, precise yet filled with emotion. She no longer worried about making mistakes. Every sound was part of the expression, and even imperfections added to the beauty of what was unfolding. Her heart raced with exhilaration. She was no longer just playing a tune. She was telling a story, expressing emotions that words could never capture. The improvisations became more complex, the melody taking unexpected turns yet always returning to the familiar theme. The audience felt the tension and release, the anticipation and resolution, as the music carried them on a journey. She could sense their admiration growing, their minds and hearts swept along by the sound. She thought of all the people who had believed in her, who had encouraged her to follow her passion. Their support was a silent companion on the stage, giving her strength and courage. She felt gratitude, joy, and a profound sense of purpose. The piano was no longer an instrument. It was an extension of her own voice, a means to communicate the depth of her experience and the beauty of her inner world. The audience responded in ways she could feel, but not always see. There were subtle shifts in posture, attentive eyes, quiet gasps at moments of brilliance, and an overall sense of anticipation for what would come next. She felt a connection with them that transcended words. They were no longer strangers. They were part of the performance, part of the story she was telling through music. The hall itself seemed to vibrate with the energy she was creating, each note resonating not just in the room, but in the hearts of everyone present. Her improvisations became more daring. She experimented with tempo, adding subtle accelerations and decelerations that made the music pulse with life. She played with dynamics, moving from soft, gentle passages to bold, dramatic moments that filled the hall with sound. Each change was intentional, designed to capture the attention and emotions of the audience. She felt a thrill with every note, a sense of liberation as she let her talent shine without hesitation. The simple tune had become a living, breathing entity. She could see the faces of the audience reflecting the journey she was taking them on. Some smiled with delight, some closed their eyes to absorb the full experience, and others leaned forward, completely captivated. The transformation of the melody into something personal and extraordinary had created a shared moment between her and everyone present, a moment of connection that words could not describe. She continued to play, her confidence growing with every phrase. The music became a dialogue, not just between her and the audience, but within herself as well. She explored the full range of the piano, from the deep, resonant bass to the sparkling highs. She allowed herself to be fully immersed in the sound, feeling the vibrations through her fingers and into her entire body. It was as if the piano had become an extension of her soul, and through it she could speak a language that needed no translation. The energy in the hall reached a crescendo. The audience was no longer merely listening. They were participating in the experience, their emotions mirroring the rises and falls of the music. She felt a deep satisfaction, a sense that she had tapped into something profound. The simple tune had been a starting point, a door into a world she had longed to explore. Now she was fully inside that world, creating beauty and connecting with others in a way that was both exhilarating and deeply fulfilling. As she approached the final section of her improvisation, she felt a surge of emotion. The music had grown in complexity, intensity, and beauty, and she knew it was time to bring it to a conclusion. She allowed the melody to return to its original form, gently weaving in the improvisations that had made it her own. Each note was deliberate, carrying with it the journey she had taken, the emotions she had poured into the performance, and the connection she had established with the audience. The last notes lingered in the air, soft and resonant. There was a moment of silence, a collective breath held by everyone in the hall, before the audience erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of appreciation and admiration that washed over her. She smiled, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. The simple tune had become something extraordinary, not just in her own eyes, but in the eyes of everyone who had witnessed it. She rose slightly from the piano, acknowledging the audience with a small bow. The applause continued, growing in intensity, some people rising to their feet. She felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the notes she had played. It was about courage, creativity, and the willingness to trust herself and her music. She had taken a simple assignment and transformed it into a performance that resonated deeply, leaving an impression that would linger long after the last note faded. In that moment, She understood something fundamental. Music was not just about playing the right notes. It was about expressing the heart, connecting with others, and trusting in one's own voice. She had done all of that and more. As the applause continued, she felt a quiet confidence settle within her, a knowledge that she was capable of greatness when she allowed herself to step beyond boundaries and embrace her full potential. The journey was far from over, but this moment, this performance, was a powerful beginning. The final section of her performance had arrived, and the energy in the hall was electric. She could feel it in the vibration of the piano under her fingers, in the anticipation of the audience, and in her own heartbeat. Every eye in the room was on her, every ear attuned to the music she created. She knew this was the moment to give everything she had, to show the full extent of her talent and the depth of her emotion. She began with a flourish, letting her fingers dance across the keys in a series of rapid, intricate notes. The melody soared, weaving through highs and lows, crescendos and gentle pauses. Each movement was deliberate yet full of freedom. She could feel the audience responding instantly. Some leaned forward as if trying to capture every sound. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. She could sense a wave of admiration growing, a collective awe that filled the room. She allowed herself to be fully immersed, her entire body and mind engaged with the music. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It had become an extension of her being. Every note she played carried her passion, her struggles, her joy, and her determination. She remembered the hours of practice, the quiet nights spent perfecting each passage, the mistakes that had taught her resilience. All of it came together now, manifesting in the brilliance of the performance. Her improvisations became bolder, more daring. She experimented with complex rhythms, delicate harmonies, and unexpected turns in the melody. The music seemed to flow naturally, as if it had a life of its own. She did not think about the audience, the applause, or the expectations. She only focused on the music, letting it guide her hands and heart. Each chord, each note, each pause was a message, a conversation between her and the room. The audience was mesmerized. The polite attentiveness of earlier had transformed into complete engagement. Eyes widened, breaths held, some faces showing tears of awe. She could feel their emotions mingling with hers, creating a shared experience that was almost tangible. She felt a surge of connection, realizing that her music was reaching them in a way words never could. They were part of her story now, participants in the journey she had crafted with every keystroke. She continued to play, the complexity of the piece increasing with each measure. She moved effortlessly between gentle, intimate passages and bold, commanding sections. The contrast created tension and release, capturing the audience's attention completely. She felt exhilarated, alive in a way she had never experienced before. The music was not just something she played. It was something she lived, breathed, and shared. The hall seemed to vibrate with her music. Every corner, every listener, every heart was tuned to the melody. She could feel the energy bouncing back from the audience, a silent encouragement that fueled her further. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently, yet every note was precise. She felt a sense of exhilaration and liberation, as if she had finally broken free from every limitation she had ever known. The music was hers, fully and unapologetically. She thought of the people who had supported her throughout her journey. Their faces, their encouragement, their belief in her talent seemed to be with her in the music. Every phrase carried gratitude. Every chord expressed the joy of reaching this moment. Every crescendo symbolized the triumph of persistence and passion. She played not just for herself or the audience, but for everyone who had been part of her journey. The tempo increased slightly, the music building toward its peak. She played with intensity, yet never lost the delicate control that made the performance mesmerizing. Each note was infused with feeling, each pause intentional, each flourish purposeful. The audience could not look away, could not stop listening. They were captivated, enraptured, held in the spell of the music and the performer who had transformed a simple tune into an unforgettable experience. She moved into the final sequences, the music reaching its emotional and technical climax. Her fingers flew across the keys, producing a cascade of sound that was both powerful and nuanced. The hall seemed to swell with the resonance of the piano, every corner filled with the beauty and complexity of her playing. She could feel the audience's admiration and excitement like a physical presence, a wave that carried her forward. In these last moments, she allowed herself to express everything she had held inside. The triumphs, the struggles, the dreams, the quiet nights of practice all poured into the music. The melody, once simple and instructed, had become a living testament to her journey. She felt a sense of release, a fulfillment that came from knowing she had given her all, that the audience could feel the heart behind every note. The final chord was struck with clarity and strength, resonating through the hall. She held it for a moment, letting it linger, allowing the emotion to settle over the audience. Then she released it gently, the sound fading into silence. For a brief heartbeat, there was stillness, a shared moment where everyone in the room felt the impact of what had just occurred. And then, like a sudden wave, the applause erupted. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even shouting in amazement. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of admiration, surprise, and pure joy. She felt a rush of emotion, tears threatening to spill as she realized the full impact of her performance. The simple tune that she had been asked to play had become a masterpiece, a performance that touched every heart in the room. She bowed deeply, acknowledging their appreciation, feeling a sense of connection that was both profound and humbling. She looked around the hall, noticing faces of people who had been skeptical at first, now filled with wonder and respect. The event organizers, who had asked for a basic tune, were astonished, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and admiration. She had exceeded every expectation, not through arrogance or showmanship, but through authenticity, passion, and skill. She had taken a simple instruction and transformed it into something extraordinary. Her own emotions swirled: pride, relief, joy, and gratitude. She had faced her fears, embraced her talent, and shared it fully with the world. She realized that this performance was not just about the applause or recognition. It was about trusting herself, honoring her journey, and expressing the music that had lived inside her for so long. She had given the audience a gift, and in return she had received a powerful affirmation of her own abilities and potential. The applause continued, sustained, and heartfelt. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering, some whistling and shouting their admiration. She felt a warmth spread through her, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing she had reached people's hearts. She allowed herself a small smile, feeling both humbled and exhilarated. The music had done its work, and she had done hers. As she rose from the piano, she knew that this moment would remain with her forever. The performance had been more than a success. It had been a revelation. She had discovered the power of her own expression, the ability to transform simple notes into profound emotion, and the strength to trust herself even in the most challenging circumstances. She had brought the audience to their feet, not through spectacle alone, but through authenticity, skill, and the courage to follow her own path. The echoes of the final applause filled the hall, and she stood there for a moment, absorbing it all. She felt a sense of connection that transcended the stage, the lights, and the audience. She had communicated something essential, something that could not be captured in words alone. The music had spoken for her, and the audience had listened, felt, and responded. It was a triumph in every sense, a moment of pure fulfillment that would shape her journey for years to come. After the applause had finally subsided, she sat quietly at the piano for a few moments, letting her heart slow and the adrenaline fade. The experience of performing on that grand stage with the audience completely captivated was unlike anything she had ever imagined. She felt both exhilarated and humbled. She had faced her fears, trusted her instincts, and given everything she had to the music, and it had been received with genuine admiration. As she rose from the piano, she felt a wave of gratitude for everyone who had supported her along the way. Her journey had not been easy, filled with moments of doubt, frustration, and uncertainty, but all those experiences had prepared her for this very moment. The long hours of practice, the small victories, the quiet determination, and the love for music that had always burned within her had led to this unforgettable performance. Backstage, the reactions were immediate. Other musicians and event organizers approached her, offering sincere praise and congratulations. Some admitted they had underestimated her, having expected a simple performance and finding themselves completely enthralled instead. Their admiration was not just for her technical skill, but for the courage and artistry she had demonstrated. It was a recognition of her authenticity, of her ability to convey emotion and tell a story through music. The media representatives covering the event were eager to speak with her. Photographers took pictures, and interviewers asked questions about her inspiration and preparation. She answered with humility, focusing on the joy of performing and the love of music that had carried her to this stage. She wanted them to understand that while the applause and recognition were wonderful, it was the music itself that mattered most. The connection between the performer and the audience, and the ability to express what words often could not. In the following days, the impact of the performance began to take shape. Invitations to perform at other prestigious events arrived, as well as offers for collaborations and opportunities to reach wider audiences. But more than the professional recognition, it was the personal validation that meant the most to her. She had proven to herself that she could trust her instincts, take risks, and let her talent shine. The simple tune she had been asked to play had been transformed into a showcase of her full potential, a testament to years of dedication and love for music. She reflected on the performance often, thinking about the audience's reactions, the flow of the music, and the moments when she had felt completely immersed and free. Those reflections strengthened her resolve to continue pursuing her passion. She understood that the journey of a musician was ongoing, a lifelong exploration of expression, technique, and emotion. The experience on that stage had been a milestone, but it was also a beginning, a point from which she could continue to grow, experiment, and connect with others through her music. Her family and friends celebrated her success, but they also reminded her to stay grounded. They encouraged her to continue practicing, to remain humble, and to focus on the joy of music rather than fame or recognition alone. Their support was a constant reminder of the foundation that had brought her this far, and she treasured their guidance and love. Over time, the performance became a defining moment in her career. People who had attended the event spoke of it with awe, sharing stories of how the music had moved them, inspired them, and left them in admiration of her talent. She received letters and messages from strangers expressing their gratitude and how the performance had touched them. These connections reinforced her belief in the power of music, its ability to transcend barriers, and the importance of expressing oneself authentically. She continued to perform, each time bringing a part of herself to the music. The experience had taught her that the most compelling performances were those that combined skill, emotion, and courage. She experimented with new pieces, incorporated her own improvisations, and allowed her personal experiences to shape her music. Every performance became an opportunity to connect with the audience, to share a story, and to express what lay deep within her heart. Even as opportunities and recognition grew, she remained focused on her love for the piano and the joy of performing. She remembered the quiet moments of practice alone in her room, the simple pleasure of creating music, and the feeling of fulfillment that came from expressing herself. Those memories grounded her, reminding her that no matter how big the stage or how large the audience, the essence of her talent and passion remained the same. Looking back, she realized that the moment when she had been asked to play a basic tune was, in many ways, the catalyst for her growth. The challenge had pushed her to trust herself, to explore her own creativity, and to reveal her true potential. What had seemed like a limitation became an opportunity to shine, to transform a simple instruction into a performance that resonated deeply with others. It was a lesson she carried with her in every aspect of her music and life. She also became an inspiration to others, particularly young musicians who faced doubt, fear, or the feeling of being underestimated. She shared her story with humility, emphasizing the importance of practice, perseverance, and belief in oneself. She encouraged them to embrace challenges, trust their instincts, and express their own unique voice through music. Her journey became a testament to what could be achieved when talent was combined with courage, passion, and dedication. The experience on that stage stayed with her not just as a memory, but as a source of confidence and inspiration. She knew that she could face any challenge, overcome obstacles, and create something extraordinary from even the simplest beginnings. The performance had taught her that music was more than notes and technique. It was a language of emotion, a bridge between hearts, and a way to share one's story with the world. As she continued her career, she carried the lessons of that day forward. She approached every performance with the same combination of humility, dedication, and courage. She experimented with new compositions, collaborated with other musicians, and explored different styles and genres. Each new experience added to her growth, and she remained committed to expressing herself authentically, allowing her music to touch and inspire others. In quiet moments, She often reflected on the journey that had brought her there, from the first hours spent practicing alone in her room, to the nerves and excitement backstage, to the moment she transformed a simple tune into a powerful performance. Each step had been essential. She recognized that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to express herself, and she embraced it all, knowing that the music inside her would continue to guide and inspire her for years to come. The standing ovation that had greeted the conclusion of her performance was not just a recognition of her skill. It was an acknowledgement of her courage, her creativity, and her authenticity. She had taken a risk, trusted herself, and shared a piece of her heart through the piano. That moment and the impact it had on the audience became a defining point in her life, a reminder that passion, dedication, and authenticity could turn even the simplest beginning into something extraordinary. She carried that lesson forward, performing with heart and honesty, inspiring others with her story, and continuously growing as a musician and as a person. The journey that began with a simple tune had transformed her, and in turn it transformed those who were fortunate enough to hear her play. And so, with every note she played thereafter, she honored the music, the audience, and the courage that had brought her to that unforgettable stage.